Yo, what it do? 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 Man, that was like a lot going on.
I'm sorry. I'm just so excited.
What are you excited about?
Because we're back. That's why.
In full effect.
In full effect.
2024, y'all.
2024.
Y'all made it.
2024.
If you are watching this podcast right now, you made it to 2024.
Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
And 5 days. You made it 5 days into 2024.
Listen, that's in itself just a blessing. Just being able to be alive, that is the blessing. Like, that's it. We can probably end the show and go to sleep. Because
I like that.
Because it's just a blessing to be able to be here, man. All the things that we're hearing about, and the ending of the year and the beginning of the year are always you kind of hold your breath, right? Because there's just so much happening. And so happy New Year to all of you. I hope your new year you brought in your new year in the way that you wanted to ring it in. Mm-hmm. And we're just so glad to be here, honestly.
Yeah. So who's walking with us tonight on this new year? We got 12 people watching, and we know there's some of y'all that watch
13.
That don't say nothing, but It's all good. We rock with you. We appreciate you hanging out with us. So put it in the chat, put it in the comments. We want to shout you out. Who joined us on our first episode for 2024. I was about to say 2024.
You know what's crazy? You know how Facebook does its memory? It reminds you of the same time around this time. We actually did a show. We talked about two houses, one church, two houses or whatever. And what's crazy is it felt like we just did that like just a few months ago, maybe about like 3 or 4 months ago. It's a year ago that we've did that show. But anyway, that episode. But it's just crazy how time just flies.
Yeah. Life be crazy.
Life be crazy. I guess nobody in the comments. No one wants. Everybody's shy today.
I'm going to just put some horn.
Okay, Sister Russell. Happy New Year. Yes, we are blessed to see another year. Indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, the new year for us we brought it in real chill, cool, spent it with some friends, and that was what it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we watched the real ball drop in New York, and then after that we tried to watch what Texas does.
Oh, Jesus.
And Texas shouldn't even like celebrate the new year.
Down.
Just celebrate
they
it.
Should if you are on the streets, like you are around the Reunion Tower, then just
or maybe if you're in Austin, it's probably lit in Austin.
I don't know, but I don't think they televise that in New York.
The televised version of the Texas did during the new year.
That joint was mad rough.
Yeah, it was rough.
I was like,
it's like you have to watch the New York and then you go to LA.
Right.
Like anything in the middle is kind of like
womp 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 womp.
Yeah, because we were toasting up the New Year at 11. Right.
11 our time.
11 our time.
Yeah, we were definitely in New York. Like our New Year started in New York at 11 o'clock. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And yeah, it's the new year. New things. Everything new.
That's right.
New.
It's a new year. It's a new season for Carlene plus Jamie.
Yes.
We've added a few things that, some new things you'll see. I think we've talked about creating a website. We've mentioned also marital counseling, offering that. We've mentioned a whole lot of different things that we want to take our ministry to the next level and offer our services, whatever we have, to whomever would want them.
Right. So lots of things that we are looking forward to and anticipating. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk about, or as we're talking about New Year, right? The New Year. I think for the first time, no, I'm lying. I don't usually do resolutions. Do you? Mm-mm. So resolutions is a thing that we don't really do. But I think this year in particular, we decided to take a different tone, not a different tone, a different approach. That's the word I'm looking for. A different approach to what people would consider resolutions. It's more goal planning, family planning, than it is resolutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think commitments. I think that's a good topic you brought up. So we were hanging out with some friends over the break, Christmas and holiday break, having dinner, and they were talking to us about how they, as a couple, go on a trip every year, right?
Right.
And they have a meeting. Like
well, it's not a meeting. I don't think it's that formal. You're making it seem like it's formal.
Well, they having a trip, a vacation, but within that vacation, they also have like a planning meeting,
right, well,
for that year, like a discussion. I call it a meeting.
Okay.
I call it a coming together, or whatever you want. That's what I call it. But I hope people listening get what I'm trying to say. Yes. They come together and they plan. They talk about their goals and their plans as a couple for the year. And that includes children, that includes business ventures, traveling, all their stuff. So we've decided.
You're looking at the wrong camera. You have to look up.
Oh, sorry. I like looking at myself when I talk.
That's very
I don't know. I like to see if I got some. I don't know. It's just more easier for me to. I guess because I'm accustomed to having meetings. I'm always looking.
You're looking at yourself, not the person that's
I'm looking at the computer screen.
Okay.
So I guess I'm kind of looking at you as I'm talking. So
okay.
Can't take my eyes off of you. You're just too good to be true. I wanna do this.
There, you messed up the words.
No, I was channeling my inner Lauren came out. Nevertheless. But back to the topic at hand.
Yes.
That was Snoop Dogg, by the way.
Okay.
Just talking about their plans and their goals. And so I thought like that would be a great thing Carlene and I talked about to implement in our relationship, about putting our goals before each other, talking about our plans and what are some outcomes that we want to see in 2024 to hope to achieve and to work towards. Because I feel like without doing that prior, you and I, we were just living and just getting by or just doing what we had to do, but not really working towards something to say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to accomplish it.
Yes. Yes. And I think this planning of sorts I think it's life-changing for not only us and as the adults, but also for the children, for our children, for them to be able to also have their goals. Of course, we talk about goals and talk about those things with them, but the intentionality where it becomes something that we're all a part of, that we're all doing as a family, and we're doing individually, like we have our own personal goals and personal things that we want to accomplish. And then we come together and we're like, okay, if you want to accomplish A, what support do you need from us in order to accomplish A, right? And so I think being intentional about those things, especially because we're getting older, is important.
That's right.
Don't point the finger. I'm not the only one getting older.
I was just stretching. I wasn't pointing. I was just
need
stretching.
To be good.
Just stretching.
Rodney, happy Sabbath. Good night. Thank you. Happy New Year's to you. New Year to you and yours as well.
What's
up,
Rodney?
Anderson and Don L. Live from New York.
Always live from New York. Shout out to Don
What up,
L.
Roger E. Franklin? What's up?
Yeah, what's going on? Yo, you just gonna skip over Rodney Grissom saying that
what
I was killing it?
Oh gosh.
Anderson talking about I need to drop the mixtape.
I clearly did not see that, because I don't feel like that's something that we should be talking about right now. We should be talking. We should be focused. It's 2024. We gotta leave all that beef behind.
Haters see what the haters don't see.
But anyway, as I was saying, it's so important. That meeting was so important, and it's not just one meeting. It's ongoing meetings that we have, that we talk through our family goals, what's important to us. We talk through, what's a priority in our family, right? What do we want to prioritize in our family? What do we want our lives to look like? And really being very focused on this is what it is and this is what we want it to be. Like financial goals, there's just so much that you can talk about and talk through with your spouse, but also with your kids if they're old enough to kind of sit through and talk through those goals.
Yeah, spouse or significant other. If you're with somebody in a relationship, well, I think that's a good practice to start too. Like, I think like there are I would add this as one of the other important conversations to have when you're in a relationship with somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
Define the relationship,
right.
DTR. Like, right. What are we doing?
Right.
Where are we going?
Right.
Is there a plan?
Right.
And then I think once you define your relationship with that person, then let's talk about what are our goals?
Yeah.
What's your goals? How do we plan and work towards that and to accomplish that? I think also too, what's good about it is me knowing exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
And not you just knowing what you want to do, but how can I support you with accomplishing your goals? Like, I think that's good. Because I think prior to that, I was just moving with like, yo, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then I would inform you.
Right.
After or during. But not something like, oh, if you see me, Jamie, working on this, we talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also while you were talking, I was thinking about there were like for us, like in this conversation, we like talk through like we wish we did this how many years ago, right? Because we felt like there are so many things, not mistakes or lessons learned or lessons that were there for us to learn that we appreciated, but we could have definitely forego the lesson and just if we just had forecasted, I think mistakes would not have been made. And so I think, so that's like a highlight for us where we're just like, okay, we know what we're doing, where we going. Mm-hmm. So it's so cool to feel that. What's up?
Nothing.
Oh, what's up? Melissa,
BC, you made it.
BC.
Roger Franklin, my dude, what's going on, man? Good to see you in the chats. Yes. Good to see everybody in 2024.
Yes.
Good to see y'all. Happy y'all made it. Hope this is a promising and blessed new year for everybody.
And I also wanted to take a moment because I want to take a moment to acknowledge the amount of people that are currently grieving. As we started the show, we talked about how like the beginning of the year, we're kind of like holding our breaths because it's like, ooh, Jesus, And so we want to acknowledge the people who are currently grieving. We want you to know that we are lifting you up, praying for you, for God's comfort and wanted to acknowledge that as well. Yeah, it's a happy new year, depending on, so just wanted to make that acknowledgement there. What up, Marissa? She's in the comments.
Yeah.
MSL Pierre.
7.
I would love to know, MSL Pierre. I know you're watching us on YouTube. What is your name? If you don't mind sharing. But it's the new year. And of course, the new year doesn't come without drama. And so I'm just going to touch on this a little bit because I really don't have the full context. You don't have the full context per se. We've just kind of watched clips. But a lot of people are talking about Cat Williams is his name? Cat Williams. And when he was on the Shay Shay podcast, or whatever it's called.
Shannon Sharp, Club Shay Shay.
Club Shay Shay. I know a lot of people are talking about, him and all it is that he had to say. And I guess everyone is in a bit of shock, right? Because what he had to say wasn't like like he wasn't talking about himself. He wasn't necessarily talking about himself in a sense where he was promoting himself or promoting something that he had going on. Like he talked a lot about a lot of things. And so I don't really have context, honestly. I don't know if you guys went ahead and watched it, but you didn't watch it, right?
No, I didn't watch it. I just watched clips. I do need to sit down and watch it. He said a lot. I don't have any issue with it or any problem. From what I understand, is that he was responding to people who had spoken about him in other podcasts on other things. And so I guess he just feels like it's his opportunity to tell his truth.
Gotcha.
And I appreciate that. I think, because like people create narratives about you whenever you don't fit into their box or whenever you don't do what they want you to do. And I feel like from what I heard from what Katt Williams was expressing was like, there were things I think Kevin Hart said, like, at one point that the reason why he wasn't getting movie roles was because he wasn't showing up. And they said, why you don't think he was showing up? Because of the drugs. So it's very easy, whether it's true or not, but it's easy how somebody can use a microphone and be in a certain place with influence, and they can say one thing about you, and that thing everybody will believe it.
Yeah.
And this not just, that type of stuff doesn't just happen to Katt Williams. That happens to people all the time. Regardless of your status or whatever it is. It's like, if somebody wants to create a narrative about you and say something about you, it's very easy for that one person to say it, a person with influence, and then to say it to somebody else. And then everybody will start believing it, and they'll start running with it before they even talk to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the messed up part about people in life living.
Yeah. But like, so what's funny is, they have that drama calendar. Like there's a drama calendar in every month. So
I didn't see that.
He is the month of January. Oh. They have his picture.
Yeah, he stirred up a whole lot of stuff, but it is what it is at this point in time. Of course, I see people posting memes talking about if receipts was a person, it would be in the form of Katt Williams. But that was interesting.
But what was also beautiful to see was Dion Cole.
Yeah.
And I don't know did you read the comments?
Yeah, I did.
And there was so many people
like talking about how he paid and he came through clutch, I guess.
Yeah, and how he would, do good stuff. And that's like what is it? It's like when you do something bad or when you do something that people don't agree with, it's so easy to talk about that. But you oftentimes don't hear about the good that people do, not until some drama or something happens. And I guess maybe you don't have to talk about it. It's unfortunate that it comes out after. But, it is what it is. I think it's just human nature. It's just the nature of being human.
Yep. It's people, according to, what's his name? What's the Jonathan McReynolds?
Oh, deliver me from people.
Yeah, people. Okay, switching gears a little bit. Switching gears. So over the Christmas break. First of all, Christmas, we have not seen you guys in 3 weeks. Christmas was amazing. Okay, so Christmas usually for me it's mixed, but this particular Christmas, like we decided to make it about our core, our family, and so I cooked, I did all the things, and it was great. It was so good. So after Christmas ended, Jamie and I started having a conversation around.
I have no clue. You have to remind me.
Man, we started having a conversation around how do we as a family keep the traditions of our culture going, right? Beyond us. I think the conversation first started we were having another conversation with someone and they were just talking about their family tree lineage and stuff like that. And how, because it's like weird. It's like our generation, if we're not connected to our if we don't have grandparents, right, that are alive, we really lose that connection, or there's like the connection isn't as strong as if our grandparents were there and they were like telling us stories or whatever. And then we were just talking about how it just seems like our generation is a bit far removed from the tradition of our grandparents and the tradition of our parents. Some of us, not all of us. I feel like we are.
So I think we also got to give context.
Go for it.
And context is we have Caribbean heritage.
Yes.
Right. So we have parents, both of our parents are from South America, from Guyana. I was born in America. My older siblings were born there. You were born in Suriname, but you came to America. So I think the context, because the context for me is important, because when we talk about that disconnect from the history or from our lineage, I think it's because I've grown up in America and I've never had the privilege of traveling back to the birthplace of my parents. And then also too, I think I also come from a status where most of my life was in America, where my cousins and family came from Guyana. It was like meeting brand new people for the first time. So there was no like reference back to like, yo, I remember when, I used to come back and we spend summers together, or we lived together for XYZ. It was just like, yo, these new people are here. I don't know them. They mad foreign. They mad Caribbean. The way they dress, the way they talk. And I am 100% American.
And not only that, I think there is some form of, or would you agree that there's like some form of embarrassment?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially as a child, like as a kid, like there isn't an appreciation for the culture. There's more of a disdain, like, wait a minute, why do you talk like that? Why do you dress like that? Why do you act like that? So
absolutely. So
that
like
as well.
So like growing up in America, for me, if you were Caribbean or you weren't from America and you were black, you were only from two places. You were either from Jamaica or you were Haitian. More so Jamaica, because Americans, I felt like when I was younger, the only people with accent were from Jamaica, right? That was it. So like you couldn't say, I couldn't say that my parents were from Guyana. They'd be like, what's that? Where's that?
It's true. They more identify with Jamaica.
Yeah, or St. Lucia, like, where's that? Right. So something like that. Then also, you couldn't talk about the foods you ate.
That was embarrassing.
So imagine you
can't bring, your lunch can't be
roti
and curry, or even cook up rice with some stew beef.
Right, or soup, right? You bring in soup. You can't bring West Indian soup to school because they're going to make fun of you. Like, what's all that stuff?
You got that chicken foot. You got that corn in there.
So American was a lot of assimilation, no pride in where my parents were from. Or then you kept that stuff only at home. So to bring it in context, when my cousin, shout out to my cousin Michael, he's my only, I have two male cousins, first cousins, Michael and Comfort. But shout out to Michael. When Michael came to America, man, I was embarrassed. He didn't have no gear. He had a hard Guyanese accent. And then your parents is like, mom's like, show him around.
Right.
Like take him everywhere you go. So, it was that hard. But I think the point, what I'm trying to say, I think I honestly was embarrassed of where I came from because I don't have history or connection to my roots. And thinking about our girls, if I'm that removed, I can't imagine how much more they are removed from that. And then I think we'll get into like the parent discussion a little bit about going back and things like that. But I think what you said, we were in that conversation we were having with that particular person, I felt so robbed.
Yeah.
I felt so robbed of not being able to have a connection with where my parents or my parents' parents are from, where they grew up, what they went through, and just knowing and understanding that history.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard, right? It's hard because it feels like as though there was some resemblance of, really when I was growing up, the Guyanese culture, I could taste it in my mother's food. I could hear it in conversations that she had with with family members. There were different times where I experienced that Guyanese culture. I came here when I was 7, but we used to go back to Guyana probably, I won't say every summer, but enough times for us to be for me to be very much aware of the culture, the food, and other things, right? So I was okay with it, right? When my cousins came here to America and they lived with us, it was more or less like, all right, let me take you under my wing and show you kind of like what the States is like, what America is like, right? But it seems as though, I think if you were the person who stayed in the kitchen and saw your mother cooking or your father or whoever cooking, your grandmother cooking, if you stayed in the room, went into the rooms and talked to the grandparents and the people who had the stories, to talk about the culture and stuff like that. If you were going back and making frequent visits back home, then I think that you remain close to the culture and it's definitely a part of you. I think when those things do not exist or it's very like sporadic, it just feels as though the older you get, the more removed from that kind of culture is not there or is not as strong. But that could just be us. Everyone may experience it differently. But like when we talk about like certain things around the holidays that is not expected, but these are the cultural norms that happen during the holidays, right? Certain foods, if you don't know how to make it, or you're not in a space or a place or a state where you can say, okay, I may not know how to cook it, but maybe I can go to a restaurant that will definitely give you that authentic food, then you're kind of like, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I'm interested to know, like in the comments or people that are watching, what their experience is, right? American versus Caribbean, like how connected are you to your roots and where you're from? And even with like, and it was, we were having, it was two separate conversations that I'm recalling, because we were talking to someone who was like on that path and discovery to like go back and find out. And that person was American, the other person wasn't. So I'm interested to know, if anybody in the comments, how important is your history? How important is your culture? Do you feel like you've been robbed? Are you like on a quest to know and understand who you are and where you're from and things like that? So please chime in at any time.
So Anderson said, I was born in the Caribbean, but I grew up here. My parents didn't do a great job of introducing me to culture. We just went there for a month. Imagine me at 7 going to the darkness of the Caribbean for a month. Traumatized was the least of how I felt. Layer on the fact that I only spoke English, but everyone around me spoke hard French. Mercy, Jesus. Yeah, that's I can imagine that was traumatizing for sure.
Yeah.
Now my question is like, where are you now in that process? Especially now you have children, right? So how does that work for you, for your family now?
Yeah, I remember, as you're going, I remember just on Anderson's story, I remember one of my friends and this Haitian guy came up to him and started speaking Creole. And then my friend was like, I don't speak that, right? And he was so mad. Mm-hmm. Not mad per se at my friend, but he was mad at the parent for not teaching him Creole.
Oh, wow.
So I think, like, thinking back on that, I think he's like angry because knowing Creole is a part of our culture. Mm-hmm. It's who we are. It's how we identify. Mm-hmm. So for a child not to know that and to claim Haitian heritage, I'm assuming he looked at it as like, this is an abomination.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like this is our identity. This is who we are. So I don't know if anybody else from Haiti had that experience, or do you know of that? Like, is that across the board?
MSL Pierre says, I've always been impressed by families who make it a priority to have family trips and go back home every year. Yeah, that is, I think family dynamics is really what is the game changer. And having a family that prioritizes staying connected to home, right? Because once you're connected in that way, I feel that you're a lot more grounded than the person who is not as connected to like a home base, right? Somewhere they can go back and know that this is where my family, my people are from. I know when we went to Zimbabwe, when I went to Zimbabwe, I was so jealous of the Zimbabweans, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, the way that they it's like family is everything. The kids don't have to be concerned about, okay, am I African, but they don't have to be afraid of what they eat, what they listen to, because everyone around them is doing exactly the same thing, right? And so it's almost like I remember sitting there in their worship services, and I was just like, dang, I wish this was what I was born into, that rich culture. And I'm not saying that being of Guyanese heritage, I'm not saying that Guyanese heritage doesn't have the same thing. I just feel that sometimes when our families leave Guyana or leave their country to come here, it's like something sometimes is lost, right? Like something's lost, opposed to if you're living there and being or making it a priority that we're going to go back every year to make sure that you know where you come from. I don't know if I'm explaining that right.
No, I think you are. And I think that's something I would love to have a deeper conversation about, because when we talked about, mentioning, like when I mentioned it to my mom, I never had a conversation with my dad, but when I mentioned it, or when I mentioned going back to Guyana, like, or like, do you want to buy a house there? Do you want to live there? It's almost like it's triggering, where it's like, I don't want no parts of that, right? I don't know if that's been anybody else's experience, but even when, like those conversations about going back there and seeing it, and it's almost like there's nothing there to see. That's the impression I get. There's nothing there to see. There's nothing there to learn. You're here now. You got everything. Boom. That's it. Like there's nothing. There's of no value in doing that. So leave it alone. And the conversation ends. It's like, okay, it's like a haunted house. All right, I'm good. Let me go back to being American.
Yeah. Anderson answered the question. He says, that's how I felt. My mom and I are from Guadeloupe, so she speaks French and Creole, but I think they wanted to assimilate so much, so they didn't teach us the language, though they did speak it among themselves. Wow. Yeah, that is a lot of our stories, right? And I'm not saying for us it was English, but even sometimes talking in the twang with non-Guyanese people, you'd be like, what are they saying? It's like a different language. Adriana says, my mom was born in Trinidad, but was here since she was 7. I am more Trinidadian than she is. Wow. I'm first generation American. My son is so removed from the West Indian heritage. And I think that's us right now. Like, we know that the girls know about Guyanese heritage, kind of, sort of, but they don't know. It's not that. It's definitely not how I grew up. They're not growing up the same way in terms of that heritage
Yeah. What was interesting, though, is that you grow up in America, you learn about American culture and traditions, right? Like, about, Thanksgiving. right? But which has trickled over. I think they still acknowledge it. And I'm not from the West Indies, but I'm sure Thanksgiving is a holiday. And
I don't think so.
or is
I
it
could be
acknowledged?
wrong. I think it's Christmas.
Christmas, that's about it.
Yeah, I think Thanksgiving is an American holiday.
Okay, so even that now, even things like Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, or like when we got married, I remember my mother was telling me, yeah, we were gonna snatch you and do kway.
Kway.
I'm like, what is that? Or what is asari? I don't know what that stuff is. I'm like, so it was like, let's go kway. I was like, all right, whatever. I'm not fighting nobody, but what do those things mean? I'm more wanting to expose I want our daughters to see where their parents are from, well, where their mom and where their grandparents are from. But I also want to be able to see where my mom grew up. I want to see where my father grew up. I want to know about his father, his mother, and I just it's just information that I feel like it's important for me because I want to have pride in it and to be able to say, like, I think like if someone asked our girls where their parents are from, they'll say, my dad is born in America and my mom's from Suriname. Oh, tell me something about Suriname.
Crickets.
Right. Or tell me something about Guyana. Like, talk to me about, like...
No clue.
Right. And I think, like, the one particular person that we spoke to that was able to go back in his lineage, the pride that he had.
The pride, y'all.
And how he was so like...
The pride.
It was how he shared that information. He was just so proud to share it. He was just so like, yes.
Yeah. And
this is my roots.
And they have, and like, my family has land, right? I have land there. My grandparents have land there. So land is something really important. And so it's almost like, what we got? What do we have? What do we have? Even being able to go back 2 generations, or is it 3 generations?
Yeah, like three or 4.
3 generations to be able to know, hey, you can kind of like see or track the history, right? Where they can say, well, such and such was such and such, and like being able to connect the pieces in real time, making trips every year or maybe twice a year, to ensure that, because that connection is so strong there. And sometimes I wonder if that's like why there's no connection there, because there's no why there's no true the same, why we're not experiencing the same thing. I wonder if it's because of family dynamics, and that it feels good to go back to something that that is there waiting for you, can't wait to see you with open arms, right, to receive you, versus you going in there like blindly, like, I don't really know anyone here, I'm just gonna kind of figure things out as I go. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a difference, and maybe because it's a family dynamics or family.
Yeah. I have so many questions about immigration, migration, all those different things. Like, is it the great escape from Caribbean countries that, once one gets out and we pull everybody out to come to America and the land of opportunity and freedom, which when you get here, it's not really that, right? The reality is like, yo, this is much harder probably than it was back home. I don't know, but I'm just like, would love to know. I want to dig deeper and want to know, and this is just personal, why the change in countenance or the rejection of the idea of going back. Like, I mean, your parents, your mom, is it like do you feel like it is a wonderful thing to go back? Like, I'm looking forward to go back, or is it like, I only go back because I have to?
I don't know. I think what my feelings are towards that is I think once you come here, once my mom came to America and she wasn't making those visits and then family started coming up, it was just like, what are you returning to? You know, like my grandmother, who was the matriarch of the family, you know, like if she was alive, we would probably be in Guyana every single year. Best believe our girls would be down there, you know, doing all the things with her, right? But when she moved here, maybe about like 2 or 3 years after, she passed away, right? And so no longer was that tie there. The tie wasn't there. The ties weren't as strong, right? As a grandparent being there. And then when other aunts and uncles started coming up here too, it's almost like, so everyone that you really had a strong connection with, or the strongest connection with, is here now. So what are you going back for? And then I think the more removed the longer you're removed from there is the harder it is to go back and to find that connection with distant relatives, opposed to like your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, you know what I mean? Like first cousins, you know what I mean? Like that extended family, but now you're dealing with distant cousins. So it becomes even more distant. This is just my assumption. I could be completely off as it relates to my mom and my family and how that works. But there's definitely this thing that unfortunately it's almost like I want to return to Guyana. I want to go, but then my first thoughts are like, who are we going to stay with? Who's going to make sure that we're good in that country? We're comfortable, that nobody's going to try to, you know, see us and be like, oh, they're Americans, right? Like, who's that person? You kind of have to go look and talk and do all the things. But it's definitely a trip that we are going to make, And that's a part of one of the things that we talked about in our family planning for the beginning of this year, is that to make that a priority as well, just to connect our girls to the culture, because we are a lot removed from our parents, how they were infused in the culture. And now our kids it feels as though they're just like, what? Yeah, I like roti and curry, but I got nothing else.
No, you made a good point as you pull up the comments. That was a good point. Like, I never thought about it in the sense of there's nothing really back there to go to as far as people
right
to go back to. So it's maybe just not a necessity or importance. Yeah.
But it's almost like trying to not convince them, but trying to talk through how do you go back for far? I feel like, how do you go back where it's not just for going back to see your cousins, whatever, but it's to kind of immerse yourself in the culture and immerse yourself in the entire thing.
And I would love to give back. I think that's a missing component with immigrant children in America, or just black children in America. But for me as an immigrant, as a child born to immigrants, and with certain privileges, I would love to say, okay, how can I support the place where that gave me my parents, that gave me my wife, right? This land, this area, like, what can I do to establish? Because that's another thing that our friend has. Like, he is investing in his village, investing in his community to see it flourish and to see it better. Like, I think that's also a missing component. But if I don't have no connection to it,
what are you giving? What are you?
Right. Yeah. And I would far rather prefer to invest there than to invest in this.
Yeah.
Right. To develop and build that up than to keep on building this up, which is probably going to get taken away from me when I die or something.
Yeah. Okay, let me go to the comments and then I'll say what I need to say. So Vivette says, I know I can't pull it up because it might be too big for the screen. Oh, no, it's not. She says, my parents migrated to the U.S. from Jamaica, and I am very grateful that they took my siblings and I there several times a year growing up. They made a point of teaching us about Jamaican culture. where and how they grew up, all of that. I know my history, and as a member of the African diaspora, that's played a big part in forming my identity. I'm a proud Jamaican. Oh, I could almost hear it, girl, all day. And so are my children and granddaughter. It's not too late to teach yourself and your girls. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that.
Shout out to Vivette. And I think, Vivette, you had something major happen in your life. I felt like I saw it on Facebook. Oh. But to whatever major accomplishment you just accomplished,
okay.
Shout out to Vivette, because I know you've always been killing it from day one.
Yes, Saba. What's up, girl? Happy Sabbath. All right. She says the ties to the culture is mostly the actual people. My parents used to always say they were going to move back home to Rwanda when they retired. But my mom just retired 2 weeks ago, and now they are just going to Huntsville where they have some siblings. Yeah. I think it's both, right? I think it can be both, where it's both the culture and it's both the place and people, right? Mm-hmm. Because if my siblings and I are living in the same area, right, we will continue to perpetuate our cultural norms, right? Because we're together, opposed to like we're kind of living separate. Maybe our spouses aren't the same culture. You know what I mean? Like things change and shift in that regard. But I think in if you don't have the people, that you go to the place and you connect in that way too.
But just thinking about us as parents, we're from New York, and we discussed amongst ourselves taking our girls back to New York. We talked about putting them on the train, riding the train with them and taking them around different places. They know where I grew up. They know where you grew up. And we know that as important because we want them to experience what we've experienced or seen what we've seen growing up, because we look at how privileged they are, right? Our girls get driven to school every day. They don't know nothing about no mass transit. They don't know no snow life, none of that stuff. And it's good for them. And we worked hard for them to have that.
Right.
And we're protecting them from a lot of things that we did, but we also want to give them an understanding of what life was like for us and appreciation. So, I think, yes, our parents worked hard to come to America and to have us here. But I think, like, for me, what I'm saying is I want to develop an appreciation of what you went through to help me understand why you worked so hard to be where you are.
Okay.
Right? Like, that's where I'm coming from. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to know. Just to see it. Like how we take our girls on the trains. Not saying that I'm trying to traumatize them or trying to throw them back into that, but I think it's good for them to see, like, yo, appreciate what you got now.
Yeah. Like,
appreciate the life you live. Don't think like everybody grows up like the way you grow up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we wasn't driven to school every day.
Right.
Things like that. So that's where my wiring is coming from when I talk about going back and wanting them to see where you grew up, where you were born, and things like that. Just to give them, like, wow,
an appreciation for the culture. And because if we don't do that now, can you imagine, right? Can you imagine what, God willing, they grow up, they have children. What does that look like? Right. It probably looks even more watered down than what I am giving them, what we are giving them, right? And then think about this generation after that. What does that look like? It almost feels like it's going to be lost, because the generation that connects them directly to Guyana, right? When that generation is gone, then what is there to kind of point them to that, to connect them back to like where we started as a people or as a culture? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I won't even get into the conversation of how church plays a role in culture, because I remember in church growing up, I remember hearing a pastor say, God is above culture and you're supposed to leave culture behind when you accept Jesus.
Wait a minute. What?
Yeah, like I've heard that as well. So I think also that framing can also make people divorce themselves of their culture and their identity. Because, they talk, like the talk was, when you become Christ, you become a new creature. You have a new identity. So your culture, you need to throw that off and accept Christ culture.
Guys.
No cap.
Guys.
No cap. I've heard that.
There's no way you heard that.
I've heard that preached before from black preachers about,
there
culture.
There is no way.
God is above culture. Mm-mm. 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 No cap. Mm-mm. No cap.
God is above culture. I mean, it makes sense, right? When you think about, man, it feels like we just switched gears a little bit. When you think about how it felt like African culture was snatched as a result of missionaries coming and doing a whole lot in terms of denouncing their culture, right? Into submitting to this, what is it called? To this very quiet form of worship, the drums and the dancing and things of that nature that can't be of God, because God is a God that likes quiet, right? That's what was taught to them. So I guess in that way I could see that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I've heard that with my own ears, but Saba seems to be remembering too.
Yeah, Saba says, why did it shrink so much? Well, let's fix that.
Because you did something.
I sure did.
Saba says, I remember once saying that Adventist should be your primary adjective, that it should inform every other thing that defined you, race, gender, culture, etc. What? I think that's even crazier than what Jamie just talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, no cap. I've heard that. And so I don't know if that plays into the role as well, right? Of denouncing all your identity to accept a whole new identity. Because I've heard in church that there are things in certain people's cultures, particularly, and I only grew up in black church.
Close my mouth. Sorry.
Let me just say that I only grew up in black church. And this is from people who are Caribbean as well, who has said that there are things in your culture that are demonic and that are not of God. And once you accept Christ, you become a new creature. But it's interesting how that messaging is like, how do I say it? That messaging works sometimes, but not all the time.
Right.
So like that messaging ain't gonna work when you busting down a pot of curry chicken and roti.
Right.
Because that's part of your culture. Right. Or whatever dish is part of your dish. But if it has something to do with your dance, right, like your cultural dances,
or drums,
right, then it's evil, right? But if it has something to do with food, oh no, bring the food, yes, bring that food, that cultural good. But if you have like a traditional dance or a traditional saying or something, that's demonic, and you must throw it away. So, yeah,
that is not okay. That is not okay at all.
Right.
But I think. I do think on the flip side, not flip side, but I do think like growing up in a church that was heavy on the culture, right? I think that was important too, where you had the music, you had the socials, you had the it was the Vincentian social. That social was like the social of the entire year. But you had potlucks where people are cooking their traditional dishes, right? You have not Heritage Day, cultural days, right? Where people bring their dishes and it's just like a cultural fusion of sorts where everybody's enjoying each other's culture. So I think being a part of a church or a community where a faith-based community where everyone is like-minded in that culture, I think that's also another way to stay connected to the culture, right? I think that's important.
Yeah. Shout out to my boy Artist, man.
What's up, Artist?
We miss you in this other crazy state, Dallas. I know you're in Florida, which is another crazy state.
Right.
We miss you out here. And Artist says, I totally understand that our kids are privileged, but I don't ever want them to see what poverty looks like.
True.
Sometimes I think we get hard times confused with Black excellence, and they are two different things. And we're not denying where we came from, but building a strong foundation of mental and spiritual wealth. Oh, absolutely. I 1000% agree. Like, you don't want to overexpose them to too much of the negative, but you do want them, for me personally, but I do want them to understand that this is not, your reality is not the reality for everyone. Because I think for our kids, I'm assuming for our kids that because of the school they go to and because of where they live, that they assume everybody.
Yeah, they know that.
Yeah, because
they know when they go back to New York, that joint be like, yo, we in the hood.
Right. Because right now, all of their friends get picked up.
Right.
After school,
it's
of
living in the suburbs.
Right.
It's the burbs living, right?
Right. But I think for me, my biggest thing with our daughters is about exposure. And how do I invest in them to make them well-balanced human beings, to understand not to look down on somebody because of how they live or how they grew up, but to put value in everything and everyone.
Yeah.
So that they have purpose and meaning, and that they're not someone who steps on somebody else's back or use them. That's my thing. So I want to take them to where I grew up. I want to take them all over the world. I want them to travel to different countries, different continents. I want them to see what the world is like and not just be so boxed into this thing called America.
Yes.
Let me say, this experiment
I'm
called
telling
America.
You, when I think, oh my gosh, I think that is where it's at. And I agree 1,000% with what you just said, that is at the core of why it is that we want to preserve our culture so that they can appreciate. I think there's just something great about knowing where you are from and knowing that you can connect to it, right? And you don't feel like almost like you're wandering or like you're like lost. You're by yourselves. But there's something about connecting to culture and a community where you are not alone. I also think traveling is where it's at, for our family. Again, going back to our family planning, right? That's something that's a priority for us because, when you are, and we understand the privilege in being able to talk about that, to talk about being able to wanting to travel, we understand it and we acknowledge that. And so with that privilege, we're just like, when you step out of America, the United States of America, there's just something that allows you to really appreciate people and also our privilege here in America, right? I will never forget when we went to Ghana and we had that experience where, water was cold. The lights weren't turning, like when we turned on the light switch, that joint was not turning on, and there was no such thing as a flashlight, a candle, there was no phone with a little torchlight coming through, and it made us appreciate what we had here in America. When we went to other parts of the world where we're just like, oh my gosh, the culture, the singing, the dancing, the people is just something that really changes your outlook on life, your perspective, and you're not as, for me, I was very narrow-minded, right? Like I felt like this is what life was, all that life had to give per se. But when you go out and you experience different cultures, different countries and stuff like that, like it really sweetens the pot, and really that perspective and that understanding of people and love for people.
Nailon said, I just came on and heard Vincie's social.
Yo, let me tell you about that Vincentian social. For those of you who are just like, what is she talking about? The Vincentians, right? They had Vincentian Day. I think every year. I think I don't remember Jamaica Day. I don't think there was like I don't think Jamaica Day was as big as Vincentian and Grenadines
In New York.
Day in New York.
In New York.
So there was Guyana Day too. That was cool. But let me tell you something. When it was St. Vincent and Grenadines Day,
That was a Vincentian cultural explosion.
the day was cool, right? I think I probably went to it once or twice at Wingate High School. But let me tell you something about the social.
Yep.
When I say ting-a-ling-a, with the guitar, they had the drums.
It was that one guy.
And the singing.
Every year on the
and we
guitar.
doing all the things. Like, that was, like, epic. So Vincentians, for me, hands down, will always get
But
that.
it's an example of how it's okay to keep that part of the culture. But
Listen, same people.
Or that part of the culture is okay when the sun set. But don't bring that when the sun is up.
Listen, the same people that are talking about no dancing in the church or don't play no drums in the church, when you see them catch a wine in the corner because they're hearing that music, that sweet music.
It's the man with the guitar. It's the man with the guitar.
Oh,
he was the
gosh.
maestro, the Pied Piper.
It was.
Everybody was at that Vincent social at Wingate.
At Wingate, you best believe we were having the time of. I used to come out drenched.
Yep.
With sweat from doing all the things. But going back to what Sava's made mention in the comments, you want to go ahead and read that?
Yeah, so as we're getting ready to wrap up, this conversation reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou. I come as one, but I stand as 10,000, which is a way that kids can understand that there are many people and things that make them who they
I love
are.
that, Saba.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, with the closing Vespa thoughts and the closing remarks.
That's right. That's right. That's
That
right.
was like perfect.
That's right.
Perfect as like it really is about what you just said. Okay.
That's right.
Artist says we as Black Americans must realize that we are the only country that put a label on ourselves. When you go to other countries, you are considered an American, not a Black or white American. Facts to that.
Yep.
Facts to that.
The experiment ain't working. I'll just say it like that.
Okay.
Not for everybody.
Not for everyone. Marquis says that his wife has been sentient. Okay.
Okay. So if she been to New York, she has been to that social. Or she got a family member who has gone.
That's social.
And they will tell her about it.
That's social. And honestly, if we go back to New York, like if we were to go and visit New York.
Oh, I'm front line.
During that, and Nylon says in October.
Yep. I remember it was always cold. I'm front line.
Listen, I would be all up in there talking about skipping in the ring.
That's right.
Skipping in the ring.
Oh, she's from New Jersey, so she's been there.
Okay, so she's definitely been there.
She's been there.
I would say definitely, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, she needs to go.
Yeah. But that's to say if it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
Nylon, is it the same?
You might not want to answer.
Why not? That's his people.
That's his culture.
That's his culture, right? Ain't nothing to be ashamed of. He might just be like, yeah, we still do that. But this has been a great conversation. I think it just reignites and confirms. Oh, wow, she always talks about it.
There you go. Yo, that is the joint.
Man.
Yeah.
That was some good social.
It was.
Quick. And that was a social that, I mean, you had people hanging out outside or whatnot, but it was that you definitely saw like everybody and their mother, like the cool cats and the cool girls would be up in there talking about skipping in the ring. Choose the one you love.
Right.
This the one you love.
It's the man on the guitar. It was the man on the guitar.
And then we used to do, what was the other game?
Brown girl in the ring. It was like, I just remember it was just a whole, and then like they would make like a train.
That was the march. That was the good old march to end the entire time. But
culture is good. Knowing your history is good. Mm-hmm. Being proud of where you're from and teaching it to your children so they can teach it to their children. And I'll close it out with this story. When the children of Israel were crossing over to the other side, God said, take these stones. And when they ask you, what do these stones mean? When your children ask you, what do these stones mean? They're a reminder of how God brought us over. So I see that as a preservation of culture and our story. That God was telling them that, yo, take these stones so that when your children ask, what do these stones mean? You could tell them, this is how I brought you over. So
I love it.
I definitely believe that it's important for us to teach our children to know where they're from, to appreciate where they're from, not just the food, but all of it.
Yeah.
And that they can grow up to teach their children so that it is a story, a legacy that is handed down for generations to come.
Amen. Amen.
Yep.
This has been great. We can't wait to be back next week. Again, Happy New Year again to you guys. And remember that we love you guys. And we hope that you have a wonderful Sabbath or Saturday, whatever it is that you do. We love y'all. Peace.
Peace.
3, 2, 1.